Okay, guys, as we are moving on in Chapter 15, I realize there are some important dates that you need to be thinking about as we're finishing up the semester, and I just want to make sure that you get these. We have today left as far as class goes. We have Tuesday that we'll meet together. We have Thursday that will be online, and we'll look at our Chapter 16, and I will post the study guide for your exam. On the 7th, on Friday, geez, my phone is making all this noise. On Friday, the comprehensive final for those of you who missed exams or who have low exams will be available in the computer-based testing center from 9 to 4. If you're looking for a study guide for that, just take your study guide from the last 3 tests and the one that'll be coming up on Thursday, and that will help you figure out what's going to be on the final for the comprehensive final. Keep in mind, the only people that need to take that are those that want to make up for a 0 as a grade or want to try and get a better grade for a low exam, but you don't have to take it if you don't want to. So if you miss it, don't come crying. So then on 12/13, we will have our final exam for the course. It'll be in the computer-based testing center, open between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. So write these down, put them in your calendars, make a copy of this. I put a copy of it on Springboard. I want you guys to be ready for this. So as we continue on we talked a little bit about biomes. Now we're going to get into the physical forces that affect the Earth and create things such as weather. So in looking at our Earth, we can see that the global air circulation patterns create things like deserts and rainforests, and that's because the air circulates around the Earth in very specific patterns. So we might ask a question, and this is kind of the question that's always asked of students: do they understand biology? Why is it warmer at the equator and colder at the poles? And so some people tend to think that the Earth is closer to the sun, and that affects whether or not it's warm or not. And really, you have to keep in mind that the Earth is tilted on its axis. And so the sun is going to shine most directly at the Earth's equator, which is going to give it its warmest temperatures. And then at the poles, it's going to be less direct. Notice that I'm going to put my mouse here. At the equator, it's very direct. The sun goes directly to the equator, the shortest distance. And keep in mind, guys, the Earth is huge. It's not this little ping pong ball sized thing. It is a huge, huge space. So here at the North Pole, the Earth's rays are spread out, and so the amount of solar energy hits the Earth at the equator, and then the amount that's spread out at the poles is going to affect the distribution of that solar energy and lead to warmer temperatures at the equator and cooler temperatures at the pole. So that is also then going to affect the formation of rain. So air is heated and it rises, and the solar energy is going to hit the Earth and warm the air at that point. So when the direct sunlight hits that area, the heated air is going to rise up, and sometimes it takes with it moisture, depending on where it's coming up from. If it's coming up over a lake or over the ocean versus if it's coming up over the desert. So we have the rising air as it reaches parts of the atmosphere. It's going to move away from the Earth and move up into the atmosphere, and as it moves up, it's going to begin to cool off. And the cooling air is going to lose moisture, and that's how we have the formation of clouds and the release of that moisture in the form of precipitation like rain or like snow. And so here's a good little diagram. You see the sun hitting the earth. The warm air is going to rise, and as it rises it becomes cool. And if it's full of moisture, the rain is going to be precipitated and heads back down towards the earth. And we see that in global circulation patterns. So like here over the formation of a desert, you can see we've got our Earth's equator right here. The sun is going to hit the equator very directly. It's going to cause a lot of that air to rise up and move away from the Earth's surface. And then as it moves up towards the North Pole or down towards the South Pole, it's going to become warmer. And as the air moves down towards the Earth's surface and becomes warmer, it can hold more and more moisture. So in these certain areas, there's going to be very little rainfall. So when there's very little rainfall, of course, that's when we get our formation of our deserts. And so we might ask questions like, is it warmer or cooler in urban areas relative to nearby rural areas? We call this an urban heat island because asphalt, cement, and the tops of buildings absorb heat, raising the temperature. So it's warmer in urban areas where there's lots of asphalt, lots of cement, and the tops of big buildings. So here's a picture of the Polymer building that's here at the University of Akron. And one thing you may have noticed if you've walked near this building is that it gets extremely windy as you get near this building. And that is because we see tall buildings forcing wind downwards, so it gets very windy near these buildings. And usually in the urban areas, we're going to see much more heat, and it's going to raise the temperature. So keep in mind that the Earth hasn't always been this way. The development of urban areas is relatively new as far as the evolution of our planet has gone, and so we are actually influencing the weather, influencing the climate, and changing it based on man's urban global footprint or carbon footprint or ecological footprint. So if I were to ask you a question on your test, in which place would you expect to have the highest temperatures during the summer? Would you expect it in Denver, Colorado, in Dallas, Texas, Farmers Branch, Texas, which is a small town on the outside of Dallas, or Freeport, Maine? Hopefully you looked at this and you said, okay, what's closest to the equator and a big city, and that would be Dallas, Texas. So energy and chemicals are flowing within our ecosystem. You can see just from a simple food chain, we've got the beginning of all of that energy coming from the sun. The sun is the initial source of energy throughout our ecosystem. So then the sun passes its energy on to the primary producers, which would be the plants. And the plants convert that light into food through photosynthesis. So plants are producing their own food. That's why they're called primary or first producers, producing their own food. Then you have the thing that eats the plants, which would be considered herbivores. Those are animals that eat plants. In our secondary consumers, we have carnivores that are animals that eat herbivores. And then our tertiary or final consumer, there's nothing usually bigger than that. These are the carnivores that eat other carnivores. And so energy is going to flow throughout our ecosystem, and only a certain amount of energy is going to be passed along at any specific phase. And so then we ask the question, is this really representative of nature? Is this something that nature can understand, a very simple food chain? Or would we want to look at something like a food web, where we can see that energy is found at multiple stops in the food chain, and that some things don't just eat plants or just eat animals. There are some things that eat both of those or make multiple stops on the food chains. So we have another part of the food chain that we didn't talk about, which is the decomposers or the detritivores. So a decomposer and a detritivore break down organic waste, releasing chemical components that can then be reused by plants and other primary producers. So something out there has to break down all of the dead stuff that's out there. So a decomposer is something that can break down the plant waste, and then often detritivores are breaking down like bones and tissues and stuff that's dead. So these things are decomposing or eating the dead stuff that's out there on Earth and returning this energy back into the food chain to be used by other organisms. So we'll stop.